Hey guys, hope you're well. My name is Rob. Welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'll be giving you my NRL Round 25 predictions. I'll leave a recap of last week up on the screen for you now. As you can see, 5 out of 8 I'm okay with. Still not, anything special with the margins, but I'll take 5 out of 8, gets the average up on the season. So that's 104 out of 180, and that's 57.78%. So yeah, the overall percentage has gone up, but yeah, still not great overall, but we'll crack on with the first game of this week. Kicking things off, we have the Tigers taking on the Seagulls, starting with the team list of the Tigers. In the backs, you have Heath Mason, Solomon Alamalo, Solomona Fartape, Junior Tupou, Charlie Staines, Lachlan Galvin, and Aidan Caesar. In the forwards is Stefano Utokamanu, Api Karasau, David Clemmer, Alex Seyfarth, Samuel Afenu, and Isaiah Papali'i. On the bench is Latu Fainu, Sione Fainu, Fanua Pole, and Alex Twal. On the side of the Seagulls, in the backs they have Tom Trbojevic, Jason Saab, Tolu Kula, Ruben Garrick, Lehi Hopoate, Luke Brooks, and Dali Cherry Evans. In the forwards is Daniela Paseka, Lachlan Croker, Josh Allier, Hamol Olakuatu, Carl Lawton, and Jake Trbojevic. On the bench is Gordon Jankum-Tong, Ben Trbojevic, Ethan Bullymore, and Nathan Brown. For me, this one's pretty simple. I don't really think that the West Tigers will be able to challenge too much in this game. I did mention last week that I think the Rabbitohs would get off to a better start in that game, but later on the Tigers would come back. So fair play overall for the Tigers to get a win in a fairly tricky game, but that's still against a poor Rabbitohs team right now. I think there are moments where the West Tigers can create special moments. I think the support play can be pretty good when they spread the ball early in the tackle count, deep in their own half. They do look pretty good. When they actually go at teams with some intent, they don't look too bad. And sometimes through the forwards, they can punch some holes. And Api Karasau can work off the back of that with quick play the balls. But against this Seagulls team right now that's really spreading the ball around nicely, had a much better defensive display last week. That's one thing I wanted to see from them, was they challenged well on the attacking side. They've looked great on the attacking side, but defensively, we need to see a much better performance from them, and that's what we got. And I think this week they'll be able to repeat that. They spread the ball around really well. Through the middle, they look dangerous. Cherry Evans controlling games. Luke Brooks with the running game. Tom Trbojevic fit and healthy at the moment. Looking great. I don't know. This Seagulls team could really demolish the Tigers this week. So I'd be surprised if it's anything other than what I'm going to predict. So I'm going to go with the Seagulls to win 13+. Next up, we have the Warriors taking on the Bulldogs, starting with the team list of the Warriors. In the backs, they have Charles Nickel-Klokstad, Dylan Wateni-Zalesniak, Adam Pompey, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Marcelo Montoya, Luke Metcalf, and Sean Johnson. In the forwards is Adam Fanua-Blake, Wade Egan, Mitch Barnett, Marata Niokore, Kurt Capewell, and Dylan Walker. On the bench is Freddie Lussick, Tom Arley, Jazz Tavanga, and Dimitrik Safakula. On the side of the Bulldogs, in the backs, you have Connor Tracy, Jacob Kiraz, Bronson Cherry, Stephen Crichton, Josh Odokar, Matt Burton, and Toby Sexton. In the forwards is Josh Curran, Reid Marnie, Samuel Hughes, Viliami Kickout, Jacob Preston, and Kurt Mann. On the bench is Bailey Hayward, Curtis Morin, Harry Hayes, and Jamin Salmon. I think one of the most important things for the Bulldogs right now is obviously their consistency. On the attacking side, they look great, and defensively, they've been excellent all season. The attack has improved throughout the season, as we've seen, but one thing that's really helping them at the moment is consistency with the lineup. They've had the same back line for a good few weeks, maybe months at this point. Burton and Sexton has now been locked in for a good few months as well, so Drew Hutchison is no longer part of that spine. And in the forwards, they've had key players like Kickow's been out for a couple of weeks, I think, at times. Same with Preston. So they've kind of got some clarity with the team week in, week out. They're used to each other at this point. Communication's going to be top-notch defensively, and knowing exactly what they want to do in attack as well. So having that same consistent team really helps. Now with the Warriors, they've kind of had the same team for the most part. Only a couple changes here and there. Nothing too drastic at times. But I just don't know. Even with Metcalf in there, who I rate extremely highly at number 6, I don't know if the Warriors are strong enough. They've got a good forward pack. They're decent on the edges at times with Niokore and Capewell. They're strong, solid defensive players that can run the ball well. But I just don't know if they've got enough to compete. I really don't think that they can compete through the middle, on the edges, defensively. This Bulldogs team is really firing at the moment. There's still part of me that thinks that the Warriors can disrupt somebody's season, and maybe they could have an impact here, because based on the individuals that they've got, we all know that the Warriors have got great individual players that can turn a game if they need to. But they've just not been doing it individually and as a team. They're just way off compared to the Bulldogs at the moment. So I'm going to go with the Bulldogs to win 13+. Next up, we have the Broncos taking on the Eels, starting with the team list of the Broncos. In the backs, they have Tristan Saylor, Selwyn Cobbo, Katoni Staggs, Dean Marinette, Jesse Arthurs, Josh Rogers, and Adam Reynolds. In the forwards is Corey Jensen, Billy Walters, Xavier Willerson, Brendan Piacora, Jordan Rickey, and Patrick Carrigan. On the bench is Blake Moser, Kobe Hetherington, Josiah Karapani, and Martin Tapu. On the side of the Eels, in the backs, they have Clint Gutherson, Mike Acevo, Will Penasini, Blaise Talangi, Sean Russell, Dylan Brown, and Dejan Assey. In the forwards is Regan Campbell-Gillard, Brendan Hans, Sean Lane, Kelma Tulangi, Bryce Cartwright, and Joe Afengawi. On the benches, Joey Lussick, Makahesi Makatoa, Luca Moretti, and Dan Keir. What a shit show this could be. Here's the thing. This feels like an awkward matchup, right? And when it's an awkward matchup, who do you want to lean towards? Well, personally, I want to lean towards the Eels because it's an awkward matchup. But then, we'll get to the game, the Broncos will win, and I'll be sat there thinking, of course the Broncos won. Of course they did. Number one, it's the Eels. And number two, they've got some better individuals there. And three, they've been a stronger team this season anyway. But then, I'll go with the Broncos because it makes logical sense. But guess what? They're playing against the Eels. So, this is an absolute shit show waiting to happen. Now, I think both teams defensively have been shocking this season. There are some moments where in attack they can create opportunities, but right now, I think based on where they are in the season, confidence levels, and just production right now, I actually am leaning more towards the Eels. And not just because they're a weird team. I actually just have more trust in them right now compared to the Broncos. I think defensively, I've said it before and I'll say it a million times so far this season, the Broncos are just very weak-minded right now. Very weak-minded. And there's something about the Eels, I think without Moses, they seem to be getting it right. Dylan Brown steps up when Moses isn't there sometimes, and Gutherson has been good at times. They weren't great last week, but I think looking at the player availability for the Broncos, I think the Eels can really compete in this one. I think it'll be a somewhat high-scoring game, very, very back and forth. Wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos took a sort of commanding lead and then chucked it away late on, even though, yes, the Eels have done that recently, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos were the ones to do it, especially at home. Maybe the element of toxicity starting to build up at Suncorp right now, but yeah, I think players like Talangi, Brown, even Gutherson, Penasini, I think they will be the difference makers, and still missing players like Ezra Mam and Reece Walsh is going to be tricky for the Broncos, and there's only so much that Reynolds can do, and even players like Staggs who are great on the edges, but I don't know. This is going to be an absolute mess, but I think when it comes to a mess, the Eels know how to use that to their advantage. So I'm going to go with the Eels to win, 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Raiders taking on the Panthers, starting with the team list of the Raiders. In the backs, they have Jordan Rapiner, Albert Hopewate, Matthew Timoko, Sebastian Chris, Xavier Savage, Kale Weeks, and Jamal Fogarty. In the forwards is Josh Babalii, Tom Starling, Joseph Tarpany, Hudson Young, Elliot Whitehead, and Morgan Smithies. On the bench is Danny Levy, Emre Gula, Ata Moriata, and Simi Sasagi. On the side of the Panthers, in the backs, they have Dylan Edwards, Dane Laurie, Isaac Tango, Casey McLean, Brian Toto, Brad Schneider, and Jerome Luai. In the forwards is Moses Liotta, Luke Summerton, James Fisher-Harris, Maverick Gaia, Liam Martin, and Isaiah Yeo. On the bench is Trent Tolau, Lindsay Smith, Liam Henry, and Jack Cole. This is quite an interesting one to me because, you know, you look at the key players that are missing for the Panthers. This is a good opportunity for the Raiders to start picking up some wins, and this will be, you know, a pretty big win. Having Summerton at number 9 instead of Kenny is going to take a bit of sting out of the middle. Obviously, Liotta and Fisher-Harris, they can set a good platform, and Summerton still got some decent experience. We'll kind of have to see how he goes. I think that's a bit of a 50-50 there. Brad Schneider, I think, has a decent kicking game. Long range and short range is decent. And Jerome Luai tends to step up when he plays a number 7 role. We've seen it this season. But even though he has stepped up individually controlling games, the Panthers just still aren't as potent as they normally are with Nathan Cleary in there. I feel like this is a game where his ability to clutch up in key scenarios is going to be severely missed. However, I do think... So, moving on to the Raiders for a little bit before I make this point. Moving on to the Raiders. Having Kale Weeks back at number 6, maybe he's more comfortable playing in that role than he was at fullback. Jordan Rapiner at number 1, plenty of experience this season in the number 1 role. So maybe they're a little bit more sure defensively. with him at number 1, and then Kale Weeks has a bit more confidence in that number 6 role. Now, with Ethan Strange out, it, might take a little bit of sting out of the running game, but I still think Kale Weeks can be decent on that side, and the back line is pretty similar to what they've had over, the course of the season. The forward pack looks strong as well. I do think the forward pack of the Raiders will compete with the Panthers and possibly win through the middle. So there's one thing. And I think Jamal Fogarty's kicking game, his ability to run a game, is greater than that of Schneider and Luai. And then sort of Kale Weeks popping up where he needs to. I think these lineups makes this game incredibly close for me. But I think the difference maker for me right now is Luai's ability to control a game at 7 is just good enough. Dylan Edwards at 1, so him not being out again, and Laurie being at number 1. So Edwards at 1 is huge. Luai has already shown that he can control the game at 7. Schneider's short-range kicking game is decent as well. And I think the back line of Laurie, Tango, McLean and Toto, we've seen that consistently enough over the last couple of weeks, and they've been defensively strong as well. So I think defensively, that's the difference. The Raiders will be in this game through the forward pack and Jamal Fogarty's kicking. And it is going to be that back line of the Panthers that will just be strong enough defensively. And they'll have some great moments in attack as well to just get it over the line. But I think this will be a very interesting game. So I'm going to go with the Panthers to win 1-12 points. Next up, we have the Storm taking on the Dolphins. Starting with the team list of the Storm. In the backs, they have Ryan Pappenhausen, Will Warbrick, Jack Howarth, Nick Meaney, and Tyrone Wishart, Cameron Munster, and Jerome Hughes. In the forwards is Nelson Asfa-Solomona, Harry Grant, Josh King, Sean Bloor, Elias Katoa, and Trent Liero. On the bench is Suafar Logo, Lazarus Varlepu, Tui Kamikamitha, and Alec McDonald. On the side of the Dolphins, in the backs, they have Hamaso Tabai Fidao, Jermaine Isako, Jake Avarillo, Herbie Farmworth, Jack Bostock, Cody Nikarima, and Isaiah Katoa. In the forwards is Jesse Bromwich, Max Plath, Tavita Pangai Jr., Felice Kafusi, Conley Lemuelu, Kenneth Bromwich. On the bench is Oren Keeley, Mark Nichols, Ray Stone, and Sean O'Sullivan. So the Storm took on the Panthers last week and got a victory. There's a strong win there. Now, obviously, Tyrone Wishart got some minutes under his belt last week on the wing. And, through another training session, we'll get some more experience there. But it's definitely an area that the Dolphins can look to target. Jermaine Isako coming against Wishart, the difference in experience, height as well. I think Isako is clearly taller than Wishart. So aerially, that's going to be an interesting battle. But I'm sure, Nick Meaney's had plenty of experience in the centres now and on the wing as well. So if they want to swap things around, if he needs help from Meaney, he can provide that support. But that's just one key area that the Dolphins may look to target. I think Munster with more minutes under his belt as well in this team, building up the chemistry, that certainly helps. And taking on a tough team like the Panthers always helps. Ryan Pappenhausen as well is playing really well at the moment. The Dolphins are still trying to find some rhythm. They're lacking a little bit on the defensive side and on the attacking side. They're still a good team and can still trouble a lot of teams right now, but they've taken a big step back over to where they were earlier in the season. And I think the Storm have been tested a lot this year and have always come up good. So I think the Dolphins will certainly test them, but I like what Melbourne Storm is able to offer in response. They're just such a resilient team on both sides of the ball. Jerome Hughes is playing excellent at the moment. Just all this season, really. And I think it'll be interesting in the forwards. I think this is a fairly even battle. Maybe I lean slightly more towards Melbourne Storm, just with the productivity that Katoa's had with so many try involvements. Harry Grant at number 9, you can never look past him. And players like Bloor and Liero, I think they've been really solid, especially defensively as well. They've put in a lot of effort, a real good shift. So I think Melbourne Storm should be fine in this game. There'll be interesting things that the Dolphins can throw up, but I think Melbourne Storm should be completely fine. So I'm going to go with the Storm to win 13+. Next up, we have the Rabbitohs taking on the Knights. Starting with the team list of the Rabbitohs. In the backs, they have Jai Gray, Fletcher Myers, Tane Milne, Richard Kennett, Jacob Gagai, Jack Whiten, and Dean Hawkins. In the forwards is David Mwale, Damien Cook, Sean Kepi, Keen Kalamatangi, Talis Duncan, and Cameron Murray. On the bench is Peter Mamazalis, Jacob Host, Thomas Burgess, and Shakai Mitchell. On the side of the Knights, in the backs, they have Kalen Ponga, Fletcher Sharp, Dane Gagai, Dylan Lucas, Greg Marju, Jack Cogger, and Phoenix Crosland. In the forwards is Daniel Saifiti, Jaden Brayley, Leo Thompson, Tyson Frizzell, Kai Pierce-Paul, and Adam Elliott. On the bench is Will Price, Matt Croker, Jack Hetherington, and Brodie Jones. So I'm sure the Knights will be pretty heartbroken after the result against the Sharks last week. Really good effort from them, a lot more competitive in that game than I expected, but it was decent. very, very decent. They could have got the win towards the end. Now, I think the Rabbitohs, all the hype that we had around them after the 5-game win streak has just completely disappeared. You know, any kind of faith I had in them, in just being so confident against teams like the Knights, like a few weeks ago, I would have just gone straight in for the Rabbitohs. Like, no question at all. But right now, defensively, they've just not been good enough. And with Dean Hawkins in there and missing out on Cody Walker, yeah, it's still a big mess, isn't it? So there's only so much Jack Whiting can do. I don't really trust this back line that much defensively and in attack. It's kind of, for me, it's been all the spine, and even without Latrell Mitchell as well. Jai Gray, I think, is an exciting young prospect, but is still not able to have the same level of productivity that Latrell at his best can have. Compare that to Kalen Ponga at 1 for the Knights, Phoenix Crosland with more experience at number 7 for this team. I was a bit unsure how that was going to go a few weeks ago, but he's had more minutes under his belt, more training sessions, and he has more of an idea of what he wants to do. Jack Cogger at 6 complements him well, I think. And then players like Dylan Lucas, more minutes under his belt as well. It's kind of fill-in for Bradman Best. It's not the same, but at least he's getting more minutes, more experience, and continues to learn. Dane Gagai at number 3 in the right centre position is a solid professional, as we know. I think right now there's a great opportunity for the Knights, who have been lacklustre in attack this season, to take on a poor defensive team right now like the Rabbitohs. I think the Knights are going to be all up for it, completely up for it after the result against the Sharks. They'll feel hard done by. So I think there's going to be a different level to the Knights. Defensively, both teams are poor, and it could be relatively low scoring, but I've just lost all faith in the Rabbitohs at this point. So I'm going to go with the Knights to win 1 to 12 points. Next up, with the Titans taking on the Roosters, starting with the team list of the Titans. In the backs, you have Keanu Kinney, Alafiana Khan-Pereira, Brian Kelly, Philip Sammy, Jojo Fafita, Jaden Campbell and Kieran Foran. In the forwards is Moeki Fotuaika, Sam Verrills, Jamie Jolliffe, David Fafita, Beau Fermor and Chris Randall. On the benches, AJ Brimson, Isaac Liu, Erin Clark and Cleese Haas. On the side of the Roosters, in the backs, you have James Tedesco, Daniel Tupou, Joseph Sawali, Joey Manu, Dominic Young, Luke Keary and Sam Walker. In the forwards is Jared Warrior-Hargreaves, Brandon Smith, Lindsay Collins, Angus Crichton, Victor Radley and Nat Butcher. On the benches, Sandon Smith, Spencer Leniu, Satili Tupanua and Terrell May. So a little bit like with what I was saying for the Bulldogs before, same with the Roosters. They've had consistency in their team over the last couple of weeks and months, which has been great for them. Even when they have been tested, they've had some changes. They've dealt with them pretty well. On the attacking side, the Roosters are incredible at the moment. I want to continue to see more great defensive efforts. Now, it's going to be an interesting one with the Titans, because I think we all know that when the Titans are on it, when they're at their best, they are a ridiculously exciting, fun, dangerous attacking team. I think we can all agree with that, but over the last couple of weeks, we've not really seen it. Like, it's been a little bit up and down. Individually, they can be great. And there are some games they've really pieced it together. But it's a little bit too inconsistent for me. And I think on the defensive side, the Roosters are strong enough to deal with the Titans at their best in terms of attack. Now, if the Roosters are off it a little bit defensively, maybe there's a chance for the Titans to get in there somewhere. But right now, the Titans are too inconsistent. Some individuals are playing well, but too inconsistent as a unit. The Roosters have a lot of consistency in their team at the moment, playing to a high level, especially on the attacking side. I just want to keep seeing more strong defensive efforts. And I think this will be potentially a good test for them. I think the only way I see the Roosters allowing the Titans into this is a Jared Warrior-Hargreaves red card. And that's it. And then they'll have the numbers. There are some exciting players there, but I think, look, it's as basic as this. It is not very tactical, not very in-depth. The Roosters are just a significantly better team than the Titans. They're playing extremely well at the moment. Maybe the Titans can do something, but I doubt it. So I'm going to go with the Roosters to win 13+. Finally, for this round, we have the Dragons taking on the Sharks, starting with the team list of the Dragons. In the backs, they have Tyrell Sloan, Zach Lomax, Matthew Fagai, Max Fagai, Christian Tuipulotu, Jack Bird, and Ben Hunt. In the forwards is Francis Molo, Jacob Liddle, Jack DeBellin, Luciano Leilua, Jaden Stewart, and Tom Eisenhuth. On the bench is Toby Couchman, Ryan Couchman, Blake Laurie, and Raymond Fatala Mariner. On the side of the Sharks, in the backs they have William Kennedy, Samuel Stonestreet, Jesse Ramian, Cale Iro, Ronaldo Mulatalo, Daniel Atkinson and Braden Trindle. In the forwards is Toby Rudolph, Blake Brayley, Oregon Kafusi, Britton Nakora, Teague Wilton and Cameron McInnes. On the bench is Jack Williams, Royce Hunt, Braden Hamlin-Uele and Thomas Hazelton. So for me this is quite an interesting game because I don't fully trust the Sharks yet. Like, even though their form has been really good, there's something about them I don't know. I really don't know. For me, they're a little bit like the Raiders last season. Like, they did so much great work early on, but they're almost a team that, at this stage of the season, doesn't feel like they should be there. There's something about the Sharks, I just don't fully trust them, and I don't really know what it is. But to go on to the positives about them, they've battled really well over the last couple of weeks. Like, they're in really good form. Maybe it's just performance-wise. Maybe I've just not seen the good that they've done properly and acknowledged it. That's always a possibility. But they have dealt with some adversity and they've come out the other end pretty well. And now this is a Dragons team that, without Flanagan, I think they'll struggle in the short-range kicking game. It'd take a bit of sting out of their attack, and Jack Bird can only do so much, so can Ben Hunt. So they'll look to players like Tyrell Sloan to provide the support in runs. They'll kick to Zach Lomax into the corners plenty of times this week. I think it'll be interesting in the forwards, but I like how well the Sharks have grinded out in the middles. And I think they've been dominant in some weeks. So I think the Sharks should be able to dominate through the middle. And I think there are a few too many mistakes. There's a lack of discipline at times from the Dragons. So I think that will certainly help the Sharks to stay in the game. On top of that, I think the combination of Kennedy, Atkinson, Trindle and Brayley, I think, has a leg up on Sloan, Bird, Hunt and Liddle. I think that will really help them to set a statement in this game. Like, the Dragons, they've been good at times, but it's few and far between. I think as much as I've not really rated the Sharks that much, they are in good form and they've grinded out some good wins. And I think there is a potential statement win coming in this one. So I'm going to go with the Sharks to win 13+. So to recap my predictions for this round, I'm going to take the Seagulls and Bulldogs 13+, the Eels and Panthers 1-12, Storm 13+, Knights 1-12, and then the Roosters and Sharks 13+. In terms of winners' confidence and margin confidence, both the same as last week, both at 75%. I think there's a few that I'm very confident with, like the Seagulls, the Bulldogs. The Panthers I'm still slightly confident with, Storm, Roosters and Sharks. And I think there is maybe a few potential upsets in there. Margin confidence, some games could be a little bit closer. Maybe the Dolphins can keep it interesting against the Storm. We'll have to see. The Tigers can be a bogey team for some, but I think most of those I'm relatively confident with. But that's my recap for this round. So that's going to be it for my NRL Round 25 predictions. If you've got your own, please do let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know how you got on last week. If you enjoy this video, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Rugby League content. But that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.